Hi, everybody. Tonight we have the 23rd SWOG webinar, and tonight we are joined by not one but two speakers from Woodland Heritage. We have John Orchard and Robert Penn, and they're going to do a little relay halfway through and tag team and do our double talk. So I'm just going to pass over to John and take it away, John.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. Thanks for welcoming me here today. And thanks for listening. Please do keep your heckling to an absolute minimum, please. And obviously leave a very positive review. Tip your waitress and waiter. A little bit about me. I'm not a forester. Rather, I've been in leadership roles in charities now for quite some time. Um, and I'm really delighted that this career has brought me to Woodland Heritage and to this virtual room with you all this evening. Um, so whilst I'm not a forester, I'm a very keen amateur furniture maker, and several of the things that I've made are, still standing after literally weeks of use. So I do know a little bit about that, and I'm really very happy for this to be a conversation. So please do pop your questions into the chat or speak up, and I'll do my best to answer them as we go. And after I've given you some information about the charity, Woodland Heritage, and the activity that we undertake, I'll pass over to Rob for him to share some of his perspectives as well. So the charity's strapline is "Grow Trees, Use Wood for Our Future," and for those of you who haven't heard of Woodland Heritage, which will be many of you, we're a charity that we're creating a thriving UK wood culture. We feel that benefits our environment, but also all people and our economy too. And the way in which we go about this is by championing the good use of homegrown timber. Timber that comes from sustainable, productive woodlands, and I'm sure, like many of your woodlands, can produce some amazing timber. So, and we feel that's really vital for present generations, but for future generations too. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. In terms of our actual activities, we are very blessed to have a couple of demonstration sites, which I'll talk about. An incredible predominantly hardwood sawmill called Whitney Sawmills in Herefordshire, and a new productive woodland in Somerset called James Wood. We also fund research into tree health to help keep woodlands healthy. We run various educational initiatives, and we have a membership and outreach program as well. And all of this endeavour really is kind of designed to build on what we feel is the wisdom of the past, and the skills of the past to help us to weather the challenges that we are facing and will continue to face in the future. So I've mentioned our demonstration sites. So these are really about growing for the future. So James Wood in Somerset and Whitney Sawmills in Herefordshire, we feel they really demonstrate the value of sustainable, productive woodland firsthand. And they are a wonderful opportunity for us to bring people together, just like this small woodland group does, so people can share skills, and they can share their experience and research as well. So Whitney Sawmills was established in the late 80s by a wonderful gentleman called Will Buller. He was a local furniture maker, and he was looking for his own supply of timber, and he came across this woodland site after a local estate sold off the woodland, and Will has worked really hard to bring the woodland back and change the planting scheme to include more mixed broadleaf, and establish the sawmill. And really, the rest is history. Although really, the rest is decades of hard work. Will had a really strong interest in wildlife and sustainable forestry, and a really strong connection was formed with Woodland Heritage, which culminated in the Woodland and Workshop course, which I'll tell you about in a bit. And then a few years later, in 2016, the charity purchased the business really to demonstrate the milling of homegrown timber and how important that is to our wood culture in the UK. We estimate that we've lost something like three-quarters of our sawmills since the 1990s. So it's an incredibly important business, and sawmills are incredibly important businesses. It's situated on the Welsh border, beautiful part of the country near Hay and Wye. And it's really in some of the heart of the best oak growing country that we have. So we're not short of raw material, and it sells air dried, high quality air dried timber as well as kiln dried timber, for furniture makers, for the building industry, for people that just want to put up a nice shelf and everything in between. And the vast majority of the timber there is homegrown in the UK, and actually sourced, generally speaking, very close to the sawmill itself. Our second demonstration site is James Woods. which is being created following really incredibly generous bequest from a gentleman called James Stratton. And the wood aims to demonstrate the value of productive woodland as a really incredibly important resource for us here in the United Kingdom. I'm going to talk a little bit more about our timber economy and our wood culture, and but we felt it was important to practice what we preach, so to speak. So the woodland will provide timber as a primary crop, as well as education, obviously carbon capture and flood resilience, and a significant increase in biodiversity as well. It's situated near the Quantock Hills, between the Quantocks and the Exmoor National Park. I'm really excited to be going there on Thursday to show some people around from a wonderful veneer company. And the land's about 85 acres, mostly former farmland and some unmanaged woodland as well. Um, we planted a pretty incredible array of species there, and hopefully you can see some direct seeding happening, which is a bit of an experiment where we're using acorns, using a sort of more traditional potato planting machine. And I'm really looking forward to going to see on Thursday how they've responded since they were planted a few months ago. But we planted Atlas cedar and beech and black walnut, Douglas fir. We planted several species of maple, lots of species of oak, holm oak and peduncular oak, red oak, as well as some softwoods like Scots pine, um, sweet chestnut, not a softwood, but my favorite, I think, probably tree and timber, as well as a host of other species as well. So we're really working very hard at Jameswood. In terms of our research and education, we're incredibly passionate about using knowledge that was gained yesterday to help us to weather the challenges that we face and will continue to face. And part of that is our research program. We hope to preserve oak trees by partnering with Forest Research and the University of West of England on a PhD that's investigating the effectiveness of management practices on condition that's affecting oak trees called acute oak decline, which you can read more about in our wonderful journal. And in terms of education, we really hope that we, help to broaden people's horizons by linking tree growers and wood users together as well on our Woodland to Workshop course. The course takes place, as the name suggests, from the forest right the way through to the workshop and beyond. It's a really groundbreaking course, and it brings together knowledgeable practitioners who are working in the relevant industries, and as well as eminent speakers from the worlds of woodlands and wood. So you spend time in the woodland, in the timber yard, in the sawmill, in the joinery workshop. It's quite an intense, very practical course, and we just held our biggest course yet, which was a real success just a few weeks ago. There is a waiting list. You're welcome to hop online and join the waiting list. It's very oversubscribed, so I'd encourage you to do that and act quickly if you'd like to come along. And you can visit the website to find out more about the course and not just take my word for it. And then in terms of membership and outreach, the charity's been running for over 30 years. We've got some amazing members and people involved in the charity. At least one of the people there is someone that you will recognise. Very, very fortunate to have His Majesty the King as patron and some fantastic trustees and supporters and directors of the sawmill like Rob. And our membership, we feel kind of is quite unique because it comes from not just tree growers, but also tree users, like furniture makers, architects, landowners, researchers, but also just science people that love nature, people that love trees, and people that love timber. And we really try to give back to our membership through our events and through our journal, which is called Wood Culture. I just showed you, and it's quite an interesting day today because it's literally just gone to press. The next issue, so that's very exciting. But you can see on the screen here some of the types of articles and content that you can find in wood culture, which we're really very proud of. So why do all of that? Why does it matter? Well, I suppose economically it matters because we are the second largest importer of forest products in the world. We've seen, in recent months how quickly tariffs and the behaviour of international governments can really change our economic landscape. And we are also hearing often about predicted significant shortages of timber that will be experienced across the globe. And being one of the most significant net importers of timber, when there's a predicted timber shortage is not the situation that we should want to pass on to, never mind our children, but our grandchildren. And environmentally, it matters, obviously, because despite needing so much timber, as a society, really, for decades and decades now, we've not risen enough to the challenge of increasing the proportion of timber that we source from our own woodlands, and from our woodlands that are managed. So too much of our woodlands are, in the opinion of the charity, too dark, too low in biodiversity, and they're not really contributing in the way that they might to the sort of greener future that we would hope to find. And despite often what we imagine is happening, and what our children and grandchildren hope is happening, in a world where we're facing significant climate crisis, and a world of ever present, ever looming tree planting targets. And then socially, it matters really, as many of you will know so well, because time spent in woodlands can be so good for our well-being. It can be fantastic for our health, and a healthy wood culture, in terms of the way that we look after wood and we relate to wood and we create timber and we use timber. It requires an ever greater connection, I feel, between people and woodland, and an ever greater connection and collaboration between those people that work in the woods and work with wood. And for us, all of these roots, the economic roots, the environmental roots, the social roots, they all lead back to this concept of wood culture, which is the reason that our journal was named what it is. We feel that, as a nation, we must find ways to value growing trees more. We must value using homegrown timber more, and we must value thinking longer term much more than we currently do at times. And because we really sort of believe that seeing is believing, we hope that the activities that the charity undertakes and that I've talked you through, can help us to do that. I get asked quite often, particularly in the last year or so, what the name of the charity is all about. And um, my answer really is that the word heritage comes from the 12th century, Old French, means that which may be inherited. And for me, I feel the key word is may. The future is far from certain. What we pass on to our grandchildren in terms of our wood culture is far from certain. And you will all know from your woodlands that the woodlands can change very slowly, and the decisions we make today really do directly affect, the landscape, the wood, but also the knowledge and skills, that we pass on to future generations. So this all in turn affects, really, if our children and grandchildren can create a thriving wood culture and can benefit, their environment and their people and their economy. So for us, woodland heritage is really not a passive act of preserving the past. It's the definite, intentional, active process, of deciding what world our children and grandchildren will inherit. So that's a kind of overview, of the charity, and the mission that the charity's on. Um, I've got we've got plenty of time for questions. It'd be great to hand over to Rob as well, but I do also have a little quiz we could play if there's time. I've got some really good pictures of different tree species in timber form, and I thought we could maybe do a bit of a guessing game as we go. But for now, I'm really happy to answer questions about the work of the charity and the mission of the charity, and perhaps hand over to Rob as well to share some of his perspective.
Okay, if anybody has any questions, if you want to say them out loud or type them, then now's your chance. And if not, we could.
Well, I was going to ask John a question about the membership.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there are quite a lot of small woodland owners who are members. That's right, isn't it? And
Yeah.
it's not just sawmills and furniture makers, but it's trying to connect up the entire community of people who produce and use wood.
Yeah, that's right. We do. So I mentioned a bit about the membership, and I think that what makes it special is it's that broad church. So just in the way that we have, people that grow trees and people that use timber, and across that whole spectrum, we have people who have an acre of woodland, and we have people who have many thousands of acres of woodland, and kind of
Yeah.
everything in between. And we also see that in our in some of our other sort of membership groups as well. So we have I get, sole trader furniture makers that will fell timber locally. They will dry it themselves. They will maybe mill it themselves as well, and they'll turn that into, really high value treasured objects that they hope will last hundreds of years and bring, real joy to people. And we have some of the country's largest furniture makers as well that are members of the charity. And I think um, really feel like that's a really important point because um, our wood culture works best when it's connected. So when a woodland owner has connections with a processor of the timber that they might be able to release from their woodland, and that's why that's sort of that important kind of connection is really a driving force for the charity. We run an initiative called Open Woods and Workshops, which is exactly to do with that. It's where woodlands and people that use timber do an open day, and they draw in their local community, and that's also the sort of genesis of the Woodland to Workshop course I mentioned as well, where you have people who are operating and working in different parts of our wood culture, and it's really important that they understand. If only because if you're a forester, you want to know what to plant. And by knowing what to plant, you need to know what people are going to want to be using. So it's that connection. And you see that also in other parts of our kind of wood culture. I was at an event speaking to some armed forces personnel who were looking at potential careers outside of the armed forces. And there was a wonderful speaker there from a nursery. And they've got this incredibly difficult job of trying to figure out what people are going to want to buy in sort of 2 or 4 years' time. And then the sawmiller has well, sorry, the forester then has got to, I mean, if we're talking about oak, they've got to look after that for between 70 and 130 years, which will take some degree of planning and some degree of handover. And then the sawmiller has got to know that person so that they might be able to buy trees from them. And then the sawmiller has to mill that and then dry that for maybe 4 years, and also know what the furniture maker needs, and it's this incredible decades upon decades sort of relay race. So I think it's why it's a really good question, Rob, about the membership, because um, architects can go and train with architects any day of the week, but how often can an architect come and train with a forester and with a conservation manager and a sawmiller and a furniture maker? And we feel that that's where, wood culture's at its richest overall.
Very
This
good.
this might be a bit naive, but with like carpentry courses, and then knowing when people graduate from those, could you link with universities or like the providers for these, like City and Guilds or whatever, to
Mm.
like recommend that the new carpenters of the world use what's like prevalent, like what's in abundance, so can you
Yeah.
like sway it at that kind of level, so that things that are in vogue are the things that are abundant? I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting, and it's so I guess the short answer is yes. Um, uh, I think there's a useful sort of distinction about the economies of our softwood timber in the UK and the economies of our hardwood timber, because there's lots of crossover, but they do operate quite differently. So if I talk a little bit about hardwood, and I was at an event a few weeks ago, and it was furniture makers relatively early on in their career, and it was so heartening to see them not just using homegrown timber, but for that being part of the furniture story. So they were telling people why they choose, why in particular they wanted to use ash, and someone was talking about, the vast quantities of ash trees that are being felled, will be felled,
Yeah.
or aren't being felled. And, it's going to have an enormous impact on our landscape. It is having an enormous impact on our landscape, but also as an enormous amount of carbon that will be, an opportunity that will be missed there if we don't fell as much and dry as much as we can. So it was brilliant to see that young furniture maker absolutely nailing why they wanted to use ash and why that mattered to their customer. Um, I think on the softwood side of things, so carpentry courses, most site carpenters will use softwood predominantly. There'll obviously be differences, but um, uh, and I think that's a more a harder challenge in some ways, but there was some work done relatively recently by some of our country's largest sawmills where they were trying to um, encourage architects and people that specify timber in construction, so in homes and large buildings, to use a smaller diameter of timber. So don't over specify. Use a smaller diameter of timber, and that can mean that we can use more homegrown timber in that market as well. So there are, again, this is why we focus on wood culture, because there's no kind of silver bullet fix to the situation that the country finds itself in. We are going to have to take a range of approaches, which at their heart are about valuing trees and timber more than we currently value them as a society. So yeah, education is really important. It's a huge part of what the charity does.
You guys should run, on Big Timber on the Discovery Channel. You should do an English one, a British one,
Yes.
medium timber.
Yeah, medium timber. But another side of it, Sarah, as well, is there's this growing movement of what's called supply-led design. So earlier on, I was talking about how, the nursery has to guess what people are going to need, and the forest is going to have to look after it and so on. There's also a slightly different way of looking at it, which is we do know roughly the sorts of timber that we've got in the ground and growing now. And so we need to also think about the way we design things and design things for the timber that we have. So there's an increasing use of glue lam beams, so laminated beams that are made up of lots of thin slices of different species that are laminated together. There's all sorts of amazing bits of technology happening. I heard about someone making like corrugated roof sheeting by compressing pine needles. So just using enormous quantities of pressure, and the pine needles release their sap and I guess some chemical magic happens.
Yeah.
So there's also sort of almost looking at the problem from the other end, if that makes sense. Yeah, there's fascinating stuff happening all around the country.
Wow. Yeah. Fiona asks a question. How productive can a small wood be? I've been told extraction costs more than the value of the timber. I suppose there's a lot of variables to consider there, but what would you say to that?
Yeah, you look like you were going to jump in there, Rob. Do you want to?
Well, I was going to say it's $1 million question. I'm a small woodland owner, and that's what I think about all the time. It's very difficult to realize considerable value from a small woodland. That doesn't mean it's not worth trying. So the ancient adage is, woodland that pays is a woodland that stays. So it's kind of fundamental if you want to keep woodland coverage, you want to keep the extraordinary levels of biodiversity that you find in all generations of woodland, not just ancient semi-natural woodland across the UK, then we need the woodlands to stay. But you sometimes buy a small piece of woodland, you've got one valuable tree. It could be an oak, which could realize value of, several £1,000s. It could be a fiddleback sycamore, which could realize value of, 5 figures. So it's a very, very difficult question to answer. The demand for firewood and the price of firewood's gone up recently. There's always firewood boys around. There's money in firewood. We made in a community woodland group, we made charcoal. Well, we still make charcoal. So we made charcoal for 10 years. That realized value. We covered the cost of running a small woodland group, selling firewood and charcoal we've done it for 20 years, without really working very hard at it. And we could have doubled that income if we hadn't all just been happy volunteers. So if we'd been professional about it, we could have doubled the income. So I think there is value. The woodland heritage point is that, you really have to go in and study your woodland and look for it. And I wouldn't dismiss it just because extraction costs are high.
Right. Okay.
I think that's something, yeah, it's a great answer. I'd love to talk to you more about charcoal at some point, Rob, as well. So I think it's a great answer. A couple of other things to add, I suppose, is there's an interesting point about now, what's the situation now economically in your woodland, and what might the situation be in the future? So if you've just planted, there are steps you can take early on to ensure that you've got the best possible chance of high quality timber in the future. So on our website there are tools to help teach you about formative pruning. There are tools that can help you learn about high pruning, obviously thinking about squirrel and pest control, those sorts of issues. So it's also worth thinking about time and not seeing your woodland as sort of just where it is now. And then the other thought that occurred to me listening to Rob's answer was also thinking about cooperation and collaboration as well. So um, Whitney Sawmills, as much as it would love to, it's pretty rare that it buys a single tree. So what you might be able to do is get to know your fellow local small woodland owners. You might be able to find that a woodland near you that's not small, and that you might be able to sort of cooperate, so that if you're looking at maybe thinning in your woodland, or if you're looking at felling some trees that you feel might have good value, you might be able to collaborate with a neighbour, and that can help because haulage costs are really significant, and the harvesting costs, and that might be a way to make things work more economically as well, for you. So that's another approach. And then in terms of kind of other businesses that can support you. So it might be that you find a local furniture maker or artisan that is really interested in the value of a particular tree. It might be that you could find a local mobile sawmiller that would be willing to sort of extract trees that are of particular economic value. And also, again, it depends on what your motivations are with your woodland. It might be actually that that extracting some economic value from your woodland isn't high on your priority. It might be that you've already done that, and your woodland is not at that stage as well. So hopefully that's some helpful points to think about at least.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Robert. So what have we got? Oh, so some shameless self-promotion from somebody called Sarah Mills saying that there's a webinar on pest control with grey squirrels coming up on the 8th of December. And then uh, then Diane asks, at what age would a newly planted mixed broadleaf woodland be of use for timber?
Shall I have a go at that, John?
Yeah, thanks, Rob.
So it's slightly depends on how you define timber. Do you use wood to define a different part of what comes out of a newly planted or ancient woodland? So wood products, firewood, material to make charcoal, fencing posts. If you planted sweet chestnut in your broadleaf woodland mix, you could realize that relatively early on, 10 to 25 years. If you've got some really beautiful, clean birch trees, you might be able to use them because it's a very fast growing species for timber at a relatively early age. The same with alder. If you want to make things out of alder, very fast growing. So that you might be able to realize timber probably from year 40. As John mentioned earlier, if you want to get value out of oak, you're really waiting until 70, 80 years. And then probably oak is most valuable for 50, 60 years after that. Ash is earlier. You get ash timber from an ash tree from 60, possibly 50 years. That's grown on very good grounds. So it may not be for you, but it might be for your kids or the next generation or the next owner of the woodland. It's one of the beguiling things about trees. It's for somebody else. Planting trees, it's for somebody else, not for you.
What's the quote about planting it and sitting in the shade like a kindness is?
Yes, well, there were kind
Oh,
of many quotes, but yes, I mean, the best time to plant trees 40 years ago, second best time is now. And I can't remember the exact word, um, but it's a beautiful, the Indian poet Rabindranath Tagore said, anyone who plants a tree knowing that they will never sit in its shade has at least begun to understand the meaning of life.
that's the one. That's the one I butchered and tried to. Oh, that's what I was thinking of.
I think I butchered it as well, Sarah. So
Well done. Um, Richard asks, do you guys know, or does anybody here know about the Agroforestry Research Trust?
yes.
Yeah. Okay, that's
So yeah. So one of the other hats I wear is I set up and still help run a ecological restoration charity in southeast Wales in the Banabrycheiniog National Park called Stump Up for Trees, and we're halfway to planting 1 million trees for ecological restoration, and we're involved in various agroforestry projects, including planting quite a lot of sweet chestnut, but other species as well. So yes, I've come across their work, and we're always kind of looking out for interesting ideas in agroforestry. In a way, it's something that we've lost sight of in this country. As far as I'm concerned, all farming is agroforestry. There's trees on every farm in Britain, pretty much, apart from a handful, possibly in East Anglia. But really, there are in the form of hedgerows or field trees or native woodlands or productive forestry. Um, and we've just lost sight of that. You go to lots of European countries, agroforestry projects just everywhere at every age, and we've got, we've got to induct our agricultural community again, so our farmers back into agroforestry, because it's just an open goal. It's complete plain sense, planting trees and producing agricultural produce simultaneously in the same field.
the bit of France where we, as a family, go. There's sweet chestnut. It's the big deal around there, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Sweet chestnut is a belter of a tree. I love sweet chestnut
Yeah.
and incredible timber as well. It's really unsung hero, I think, in terms of timber because it's more it's cheaper generally to buy than oak.
Yeah.
It's got fantastic properties in terms of how it tolerates outdoors. So I've got a sweet chestnut deck in my garden that's going strong. Uh, Indoors, it's also got, I think, beautiful colours in it as well. It's got a real range of sort of burnt orange colours, straw, paler colours as well. So I think it's a wonderful tree. Yeah.
yeah, agreed.
Great
Karen,
fencing posts as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah,
I know. It's got incredible properties in the ground.
Yeah.
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 Sweet chestnut fencing posts will last 20, 25 years.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And a tannalized softwood fencing post that you buy today will last 3.
Yeah. It's magic. The chemistry
Yeah,
in it is real
yeah,
magic. Um, yeah, and there are some incredible um, species that we typically don't grow in this country as well that have those sorts of properties. We at James Wood, one of the jobs we had to do was early on was go into some unmanaged woodland, and the trees were literally being strangled by the tree guards that had been not been taken off,
Mm.
20 years too late, 15 years too late maybe.
Yeah,
Um, and we took some of these tree guards off, and the trees were literally falling down. It was, the tree guard was holding these rotting trees up. But the stakes that we used were Robinia, and they were unrotted. They were coming about a foot out of the ground in pretty good condition, and we were fairly confident they'd been in there for at least 10 years, probably more than 15.
yeah.
Extraordinary properties, we can find in the natural world.
If you do have areas where the tree guards are on, we had a webinar with the Forest Plastics Working Group, and we gave them the idea of using Duke of Edinburgh students, kids, if you like, to just earn the bronze award or whatever by doing a community outreach, and you get a lot of people power there.
Yeah, that's
yeah.
a great idea.
Yeah, and like scout groups and whatnot.
Yeah, it's quite hard work. So yeah, you'd have to really be certain you were sending young people into an all right situation, but it's
Right,
character
yeah.
building, which I suppose is part of it, isn't it?
Yeah, I'll edit the bit out about where I advocate for child labour. I'll edit that out before we go back on YouTube. Um, Karen asks, she would like to know how to contact wood users, so like people who need timber. I am having to fell some of my woodland and want the logs used, even possibly sell as firewood. I guess I would do that, like locally. I think that's how I would probably do that one.
Yeah, so some bits about scale, which kind of Rob talked a bit about in his answer about economic value in a woodland. So if you've got a pretty significant number of trees, it might be worth contacting finding your local sawmill. You will have one. How local will be a different question for different places. So that could be a good place to start. They might, if they're not able or interested themselves, they might be able to point you in the direction of some people that might be. If it's a smaller volume of timber, finding a local mobile sawmill would be a good step as well. So in some ways, you're not looking for wood users, you're looking for wood processors who are the kind of the step in between.
Mm.
You might find there are a good number of furniture makers that will fell and mill timber and will turn that into products, and that's usually of a higher value. So the furniture that they make will be usually of a very high value, and
They do
often
that to
then
keep their costs down. They
yeah, they can do. I think also the provenance of the wood is really important if you're looking to make products that are, particularly high value. So knowing where the timber came from, knowing the story of the timber can be really, really important. I think if you're um, let's use like a dining table as an example. So we can all go and buy a dining table from one of those lovely blue and yellow warehouses, and that might be a really important option for some people. Not everyone can afford to buy a hardwood table made by a furniture maker, but actually lots of people who can afford to do that aren't aware that it's an option, and will spend quite a lot of money on a piece of furniture that very well is quite likely to have been imported. So it's there is a real audience there that we can encourage to use to buy products that are made from homegrown timber, and that's where there's a great opportunity for us there. And if you're going to say, well, you know what, I'm going to save up and I'm going to buy a dining table that will be our dining table in this family for decades, and then my children will inherit it, and I hope that maybe their grandchildren will inherit it. So you'll place more value on that, economic value, but also social value, won't you?
Mm.
I'd love to think that I'll be handing my Billy bookcase down to my grandchildren, but it's not likely because it's very difficult to repair. Whereas, a solid timber piece of furniture is repairable. So I think it's not just about kind of everyone spending loads of money on furniture or everyone spending loads of money on timber frame buildings, but I think it's about where it makes sense for us as people and for families, making that decision. And that's where the value of the timbers really actualized. We had this incredible conversation on the Woodland to Workshop course. It's usually on the second end of the second day, where everyone's been talking about how wonderful woodlands are. Everyone's been talking about how we need more managed woodland. And then we stand in front of an incredible oak tree at the Duchy of Cornwall woodlands, some of the finest woodlands, that you can set foot in. And we talk about how much pounds that tree is worth. And for some people, that's an incredibly uncomfortable conversation because the price that it actually is, people are usually shocked by. They usually think it should be worth way more than that. And then for some people, just that sort of gut reaction of, well, actually, I think that tree's priceless. I don't think that should have a value on it economically. And I can think that can generate all sorts of interesting conversations. But all routes really for me lead back to us as a society placing a greater value on growing trees and on using the timber that comes from it.
So I was going to add to that question. So I was going to talk, if there's time, if you want me to,
Oh
Sarah,
yeah, please, Robert. Yes.
exclusively about ash. And so I wrote a book several years ago about the ash tree, called "The Man Who Made Things Out of Trees," and and the two people who are kind of key to unlocking local and national networks of wood users were both the millers. So that's sawmill. So the kind of bowl of my tree went to Whitney Sawmill and was milled into 14-foot boards, and the all the kind of branches were milled on site by mobile sawmill on a mobile sawmill, and the miller there, I mean, he kind of kept a proper old-fashioned little black book of everybody, in the locality who used wood in some way and might be up for making something from a piece of my ash. And then just one other thought on that is when I first moved to this part of the country, I'm on the edge of Monmouthshire, 20 whatever years ago, there was Monmouthshire County Council had just completed an initiative which was a kind of wood network, and it was productive list of little booklet with productive woodlands, mills, mobile sawmill millers, and all wood users. And it's a really valuable project. And that project ran its course, and the booklet's out, excuse me, out of date. And obviously, the project didn't kind of come by any further funding. But I don't know if that's replicated anywhere else in the country. But it was a really useful book when we first started our community woodland group. And we're milling timber from there.
Mm. Yeah, it's a shame that expired.
It's worth also saying Rob's book's brilliant. I listened to it. I've got an audiobook version, and I would highly recommend getting it. It's really the thing I particularly love about it and remember about it is that each chapter is a kind of a story of a particular ash tree and an ash product, and you get a real sense of the characters that Rob bumped into along his journey. It's really really wonderful book.
My colleague who works in SWOG, and she's here tonight, and I know she's read it, and she was impressed that I'd managed to snag you guys for the webinar. So that got me your book got me some kudos points from my colleagues. So
Yeah,
thank you, Robert.
yeah, it's great. Really good book.
Andy, no. Zana asks, what trees do you think you'd plant now that are resilient to climate change?
Okay, so
Go ahead, Rob.
shall I go on that first? Okay, so I mean, I'm sure everyone's familiar with this. Or people, the kind of Forest Commission is, well, the world of forestry is divided right down the middle at the moment. So, in one camp, you've got the Woodland Trust leading a very expressive, powerful campaign to only plant local seed provenance. So that's kind of doubling down on the genetics that we currently have distributed around the United Kingdom, and trying to only plant native trees, local seed provenance. The Forest Commission is more forward thinking and has a much less strict approach to what we should be planting, and their approach is a third. So that's third British native local seed provenance only, 1/3 British native seed provenance from something around 4 degrees south. So, if you're on the Scottish borders, you might be planting saplings that have come from seed that has come from Leicestershire or Lincolnshire. Here in the Black Mountains, we're thinking about, acorns from Cornwall and possibly Brittany. And then the third is non-native species from probably the Mediterranean. So that's your nightmarish climate change scenario. Which of those two to follow? We planted, as I said, nearly 500,000 trees in the Black Mountains. We only plant British native, but we do plant with seed provenance from further south. Not exclusively, we do both.
Yeah, there was also some work published relatively recently by I think it was by DEFRA, possibly Forestry Commission, and they produced a kind of list of species that they feel we should be focusing on as well. So that replicated a project that was done in Scotland, I think. So there's sort of further advice there, and it's you get very different answers. One of the early sort of anecdotes I heard when I joined the charity a few years ago is ask 100 foresters their opinion, and you'll get 101 opinions. So it's complicated, and I often hear foresters talk about spreading risk a little bit. I think that there's some wisdom in that because it feels that there's a really significant degree of uncertainty about future climate. Uh, so yeah, it's a difficult question, and of course, um, it's incredibly specific to your woodland and the sort of the microclimates within your woodland. Um, I remember hearing a forester talk about planting in a particular, literally a kind of small corner of a woodland that was really waterlogged, planting trees that are particularly thirsty there and seeing a young child there, sort of eyes lit up with the idea that you could terraform using the tree species that you select as well. So lots to consider for people, I think, are there.
Yeah, I guess
Yeah.
diversity is always the right way, you know.
Yeah, I think diversity is important. I would be very reluctant to be prescriptive about it. That list recently published by the Forest Commission, some of the studies that they've done to come up with that list are not adequate. So I wouldn't regard that as a comprehensive list right now, far from it.
Mhm.
Sound advice, thank you. Mark asks, is it worth milling small diameter hardwood? In the copies that they have, they've got standing firewood, some of which seems to have at least one decent saw log per tree before firewood, probably 25 to 30 centimeters. We have access to a mobile bandsaw, a Norwood that can handle 5.5 meter saw logs. So I guess the question is it worth milling small diameter hardwood?
Yeah, definitely. I think so. I mean, it depends what you want it for. Um, so shall I just give you a very quick inventory of what I got out of my one ash tree?
Yes,
You
please. Yes,
mind?
do.
Okay, so I'm
Yeah.
going to do this quickly, but there are ideas in here. So it's quite long and it drags on a bit.
No, no, no.
So this is a 125-year-old ash tree. These are the things I got out of it. A desk, a writer's desk, where I sat and wrote the book. A toboggan, 6 axe handles, 6 maul handles, 8 spoons, 10 spatulas, a canoe paddle, a coffee table, a triangle chair, 2 frames for fishing landing nets, 10 three-legged rustic milking stools, firewood, kindling, charcoal, a meat carving board, a shop counter, a wheel for the roof of a 16-foot yurt, the barrel of an ink pen, a set of dominoes, paneling. So huge amount of paneling, fellies for cartwheels, bicycle wheel rims, arrow shafts, set of 3 wooden nesting bowls, 80 bookmarks, 19 tent pegs, cooking fuel, animal bedding, 7 chopping boards, 4 porridge spoons, a jam spoon, 3 trucks, 2 catapults, prototype bicycle, components for surfboards, a 13-foot refectory table, 2 freestanding benches, 2 fixed benches, 2 coat racks, 2 large kitchen worktops, shelving. So I've got bookshelves, sort of 10-foot of bookshelves over there, the frame of a coracle, a dozen cricket stumps, plus bales, and then obviously rotting wood left in the wood itself to benefit the next generation of trees. So that's that, an awful lot of that came from small diameter branch wood.
That
The kind of big stuff was the refectory table and the desk came from the bole of the tree, the stump, but an awful lot of that came from small diameter branch wood,
that's
which is
impressive.
milled.
You guys should have that as an advertising campaign. You know, you should have that as like a social media campaign and
Yeah.
like a gift or an advert. You should do that. That's it. That's staggering. I can see everybody's. It's like Guess Who when I look at everybody's faces on here. And Robert Holmes, especially, his face was agog. I know you won't mind me saying, Robert. That's impressive.
Yeah, I think it's really inspiring. I was really struggling not to say "and a partridge in a pear tree" because obviously we're leading into Christmas, but it is really inspiring, and I think yeah, I read the book. If you liked that, you will bloom in love Rob's book. It's a brilliant read. But yeah, small diameter timber. You know, chairs have been made from small diameter timber for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years.
Yeah.
So I think it's about maybe thinking, having that ambition, saying, no, I'm going to use this for something, and it might be that you have the skill to do that. I've been able to negotiate the chat now, and I can see that someone was asking about drying, and you do need to obviously dry timber and condition it once it's milled, but it all starts with having a plan and having the ambition to unlock that value and and the social value of those objects as well, I think is really important. So I will be really surprised if you can't find someone in your local, relatively local area that would be really interested in making something from local homegrown timber.
We should swap jobs, John, because your name suits better my job, and I'm Sarah Mills. That suits better your job.
Yeah, I was listening to I was talking to the editor of Country Life, who's called it's called Mark Hedges, so Country Life Hedges, and
Beautiful.
he told me that the word is an aptonym, so where you have an apt name for what you do. So yeah, very
Aptonym.
aware of the yeah the
Before
When
uh, before I was
when
married, I was called Sarah Woods, so I was
oh,
always destined to
brilliant!
do this, wasn't I? Let's be honest.
You should have kept your maiden name, Sarah
yeah.
Millwood. Yeah, brilliant. All right. So when I was doing the starting this the research for the Ash project, I contacted a friend of mine who worked at a charitable foundation that had raised money and put money into heritage woodland heritage crafts in the sort of late 80s and early 90s. And I rang her and said, "Have you got any contacts, the people I need to speak to?" And she said, "Yeah, I've got three for you. They're called Robin Wood, David Branch, and Peter Twig." And I was like, "No, no, no, you're definitely winding me up." And she wasn't.
That's funny. Um, okay, Gemma asks, um, my neighbour planted some robinia in a former larch and grandis. It all got attacked by a pest. Any clues?
Mm. But
Uh,
I think there are some locust issues. I'm not sure if it would be that um, with Robinia, boring insects, that kind of thing, potentially. But yeah, wouldn't know for certain, I'm afraid.
Well, any questions unanswered, as my SWOG guys know, that just means I turn it into a webinar in the future. So
brilliant.
we
Yeah,
need
I'll
some
come to that.
questions unanswered.
Yeah, I
Um,
certainly know locust is an issue. I don't know much about locust, I'm afraid, but I know it's an issue in the States. But yeah, not sure, I'm afraid.
there's more than a few people thinking that my child labour idea was a smashing idea, and Mike actually has got his scouts to do it and to do some recycling hubs as well. So that's cool.
Well, that's a good idea.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
You can often a lot of the larger tree guard manufacturing companies do recycling schemes or return schemes, that kind of thing. So yeah, and obviously it's really important to do that. It's not if you're going to use them, it's not an option. You have to recycle them and get them out of the landscape reused. Um, and I know there's lots of development of non-plastic guards as well, which is hopefully continues to improve all the time.
Yeah, and there's stuff you can do with like lamb's wool.
Mm,
There's things that can act as deterrents
yeah,
naturally.
yeah.
Seem to recall. John, you said about you got a quiz for us. I reckon we're at a point in the evening where we could all do a bit of
Oh, okay, right. Yeah, I can do that. I'll have to do some technology. So bear with me as I do some clicking. So yeah, so basically this is just a little light-hearted quiz. I'm not sure how it's going to work. I might need you to monitor the chat.
we
Um,
can either monitor by chat or
yeah,
yeah, that might be best by just show of
yeah.
how about if I type question one and then
So it's
like
a visual quiz. So
okay.
oh gosh, I've got all sorts of challenges going on here.
Right,
Uh,
get typing, guys.
right, here we go. So I
Now,
think you can see the word game. Okay.
correct.
Okay. So right. So it's just a little game, really, getting people thinking about timber and its different properties and visuals and that sort of thing. So we're going to show you some on screen, some timber samples, and what you need to do is guess the tree species that they might be from.
Okay.
Usually we do a kind of raise your hand thing where you it's a kind of knockout situation, but we'll maybe just go through and see how we get on.
We'll just do Team SWOG versus the Woodland Heritage guys, and we'll take any correct answer from SWOG will be a point for Team SWOG. Even
Okay, right, sure.
on my team, I like those odds for me.
So here's our first timber species. And I'm not going to be able to see the chat again, so yeah, it'll be interesting to see what people think. There's some pretty distinctive marks and that are a bit of a tell.
Come on, Team SWOG. Okay. More than one person is saying ash. We've got cherry
Okay,
or small leaf
it,
lime.
it's oak. That's a lovely bit of homegrown oak timber. So you can see the rays, the kind of dark speckles in there. If you catch those at a certain angle, they'll sort of glisten silver. So that's oak.
You know the worst
Um,
bit? I'm sat at an oak table and I can feel the raised ridges.
Yeah,
Right.
so this is our next one. So if it's helpful, I can also give some hints. So this one, I guess this maybe that's oak again. See what you think.
Okay.
Um,
Gemma thinks cherry. Sweet chestnut. We've got
Sweet chestnut's a good guess. Yeah, it's not right, but it's a good one.
normal chestnut.
So this is also oak. It's a bit of a trick. This is brown oak.
Oh,
So you
okay.
can see, if you look, you can see like down here some of the medullary rays and but that's brown oak. So this is different altogether. This one is really good for making frames out of, so timber frame buildings. This is a real treat of a timber to use for that. So similar for some degree, similar properties to oak. I'm interested to see what you think this is.
Okay, we've got Douglas, pine.
Yes, Douglas fir. Well done, that person. That's brilliant.
Well done, Gemma.
It's fantastic when this is milled at the sawmill. It smells
Great
wonderful.
timber.
Yeah, it's got this beautiful
Oh,
pink sort of color that you can sort of see creeping in there at the top. Um,
Gemma mills it all day apparently, so she's the woman who can.
well done, Gemma. Hot off the mark there. That's brilliant. So yeah, see what you think about this one.
Someone's put beach.
It's not beech. No, I can see where you might think it's beech from some of the speckling on this
Mm.
side.
Walnut.
It looks like walnut. I give you that because of the swell and some of the colours. This is larch, so
Okay.
Gemma might be familiar with this. This is another brilliant timber for outdoors, isn't it, Rob?
Yeah,
So you get some wonderful
fantastic.
cladding made from larch, roofing timbers as well. Quite fast growing too. So what do we think about this one?
Ben thinks pine. No, no, hang on. I'm getting all mixed up. No, Ben thinks ash.
Yeah, it's a good guess. It's a very ash-looking bit of timber, and quite similar in colour. So this is sycamore. So sycamores are really lovely. Timber furniture makers really like sycamore tools really beautifully.
Mm.
It's got this really nice sort of creamy colour, but um, it also has this tendency to have this sort of grey, almost grey, smoky character going through it as well. So it's really very beautiful. And I hear stories of tabletops made of sycamore that kind of almost go like soap, really sort of shiny texture
Oh,
from
yeah.
touch and wear. So yeah, it's a great one for that.
I got kitchen worktops made of sycamore. It's a real friend at this time of year when the nights are long.
Mm.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds lovely.
Oh, Ben says this is one of the most difficult quizzes he's done, and he spent 7 years at medical school. So,
Well, I think that's it. There's such a lot of variety in homegrown timbers, and some of these are difficult. And also, it's worth saying some of these are very high quality timbers. Lots of really fantastic grain. This one we've had, so people have guessed this incorrectly a few times, and there's a little color to the timber that might give you a clue as to what it might be.
we're going for cherry again.
Yeah, cherry. It is cherry. So
Yeah.
you can see some of the red color kind of creeping in there.
Mm.
And cherry, I'm led to believe, is sort of relatively unloved by squirrels, so they tend to avoid chomping it. So that could be potentially a good reason to plant.
Ash
And
was too, unfortunately.
yes, yeah.
Yeah.
So we've got two more. This one's very difficult. Someone has guessed it already.
Ooh.
And your beloved quiz host, who feels like he should be wearing a sequin jacket at this point, might have said this is one of his favourites, if you remember.
Oh, sweet chestnut. Yeah.
Yeah, it is sweet chestnut. You can kind of see it's sometimes called poor man's oak. It's kind of got some visual similarities to it. It's a bit lighter in weight. But wonderful, wonderful timber for fence posts and furniture and outdoor structures. And it's a real hidden gem. And this is we've got, oh, actually, I lied, two more. We've had this one guest as well. See what you think of that.
Oh, come on, Team SWOG. We want to end on a high. Ash or lime?
Yeah,
Ash.
it is ash. Yeah, you can see this. I don't know if you can see my mouse point, but they're sort of I think they're sometimes called cathedrals. So these kind of um, structures, almost like a bit like an M or an N shape. That's quite characteristic of ash. And you can make, as Rob said, many things out of ash. It's a wonderful timber. And we'll do this
Jam
one as well.
spoons,
Yeah,
tabletop,
yeah. Tool
fun hot wings.
handles. So this is our last one, and this is a real stinker. This is a real difficult one to guess. We'll try to end on a demoralizing note if we can.
That's the spirit. Is it Gordon Ramsay's forehead?
It is, yes. So this is olive ash. So you can kind of see from some of the colours that creep in there, but that lovely sort of fantastic straight grain, which makes ash so fantastic for splitting along the grain, which is one of the reasons green woodworkers love it for chair legs and all kinds of things. So there we go. Just a bit of fun to, really appreciate the variety of homegrown timbers. We just dipped our toe in the water there, really. And fantastic think about the properties that they have and the objects that they can be used for. And maybe, when you're next walking in your woodland, you could think about the tree species that you've got and investigate what things could be done with those trees at some point in the future.
Yeah. We've got a lot of whittled spoons in our house. I think we can diversify what we offer as a Mills family.
Yeah.
But if anyone wants a spoon, please let
Yeah.
us know. Um, Thank you both so much. I feel that we've only scratched the surface of your combined knowledge. So no doubt I will be emailing you in 2026 for another webinar. You
Yeah.
guys have been brilliant. I think, Robert, your never-ending list of articles you made from the ash, that was my favorite bit, I believe.
Yeah. It's
Really good.
very
And I think the show for medium timber with the human angle of what the story and the provenance of each piece of wood, I really think that would do well as a Discovery Channel show.
yeah. Yeah.
Um, Listen, everybody, some of you typed questions that we didn't get round to. I will collate those and I will send them to the guys and we can get those back in a good time. Also, if you would like to advertise any of your courses or indeed your book, Robert, if you want to put that in an email to me, then I'll make sure we get that in the December the 1st SWOG newsletter, which will of course be the one that goes out before Christmas. So that could be good timing for you guys if you want to.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I've dropped a link in the chat to the website about membership and there's lots of information on there. I talked about some of the formative pruning guides and high pruning guides. There's information about the course and all that kind of stuff on there as well. So do get stuck in. And I know some of you have become members of the charity and over the last few weeks. So thank you so much and welcome. And thanks for the opportunity as well. I've really enjoyed that.
It's always we always have a good time on the SWOG webinars, and it's only possible because of the generosity of speakers with their knowledge and being sharing it so generously. So thank you very, very much. I know that we've all enjoyed it, and I will give you any feedback that we get. I will email you, and we'll be in touch. And yeah, take care, guys, and everybody else. I'll see you on the 8th of December for our Forestry Commission webinar about squirrels.
That's brilliant.
Brilliant.
Thanks so much, Rob. I really appreciate your company. Thank you. Thanks, Sarah.
Yes.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks all. What a
Thank you.
pleasure.
Take care, all. Bye bye.